Hello, everybody. Scott Golden here with the Raw review for the 7th of March 2022. I guess if you're kind, you can say this is a passable Raw comparatively to the other Raw programs around this time of year. But it seems that, ultimately, WWE is only really useful in a vacuum of being, a good program maybe the month before WrestleMania, the month before, or the month of the Rumble, and the month of SummerSlam if you're lucky, or maybe 2 weeks before SummerSlam. Anyway, so maybe at most you get 3 months of good content out of WWE a year. Anyhow, so we go to the Raw review here. They are clips from Roman Reigns attacking Brock Lesnar with a overcap there, and then Kevin Owens, Seth Rollins enters as the announcers run down the program here. Owens and Rollins said they'd win the tag titles tonight and proceed to WrestleMania, where um, they didn't even know what it would look like without them. Owens insults Dallas, Texas again, and they played clips berating RK Bro and Alpha Academy. In recent weeks, Alpha Academy interrupts. Chad Gable called the match result last week erroneous. He said he'd return and retain tonight before going into WrestleMania. In the back, Kevin Patrick interviews Riddle and Randy Orton. Orton said they'd have to win by any means necessary because they'd come too far and worked too hard to lose it here. Triple threat tornado tag match. Randy Orton and Riddle defeat Alpha Academy and Kevin Owens and Seth Rollins to win the Raw Tag Team Championships 27-01. Long match here. One wrestler from all three teams in at all times. You can only tag your own partner. No countouts, no disqualifications. Rollins then wipes out Gable and Riddle with a dive before Owens then gave Gable a senton for the near fall early in the match. After the break, Otis takes over and splashes Riddle, but picked him up for a 2 count, or from a 2 count for some weird reason. Orton then makes a very hot tag, hits a bunch of power slams, Gable and Rollins, before giving them the double draping DDT. After Gable blocks the RKO, Orton then hits Rollins with one instead. Owens then breaks up in the cover. Orton then backdrop Owens and Gable onto the announce table before Riddle and Orton both draped Otis on the table. After a second break, Riddle then gives Gable a floating bro, but Owens breaks up the cover. Gable then hits Riddle with a moonsault, but Reigns then broke up the cover and does a big Tower of Doom spot with Otis being brought down. Owens and Riddle, Owens and Rollins are, kind of in control for a bit here. Gable then hits a powerbomb, and then the lead to a brawl, and they go through a commercial break. Owens then wipes out everyone with a dive during the break. Rollins gives Riddle double foot stomp, and for near fall, Rollins then tries a rolling forearm. Riddle applies triangle choke. Gable breaks it up with a diving headbutt before handing out the German suplex to Orton. Rollins and Riddle continue here. Gable then goes for a moonsault before Orton brings him down with an RKO. Crowd pops big for this particular counter. Owens and Rollins handed out super kicks before Rollins gives Gable a buckle bomb. Owens then follows up with a stunner and Rollins hits a curve stomp. Riddle then nails Rollins out of the ring and steals a pinfall for the win. RK Bro are tag champs once again. Good match for what it was, although, and I have to say this, they haven't really done anything to make most people care about the future of the tag division, except that they've kind of gone back where they were. Owens and Riddle acted or Owens and Rollins rather acted unhappy after the match. Kevin Patrick interviews Orton and Riddle in the ring. Orton said he hasn't had this much fun in 20 plus years. And since he's been doing this, he called Riddle his friend, something he said he hasn't said about anyone before. Orton then says he's pumped to keep going to WrestleMania. Second hour begins. They show replays of the tag match after a break before showing a dejected Kevin Owens sitting alone in the back. Reggie gives Dana Brooke a good luck kiss earlier tonight. Tozawa wanted to give Tamina a good luck kiss, and she grabs his face and kisses him. This is just a waste of time. Anyway, Dana Brooke with Reggie defeats Tamina with Tozawa to retain the 24/7 championship. 143. Take this off my television, please. Brooke reverses a Boston Crab into a roll-up pinfall win here in her hometown. After the match, Tozawa called Tamina the love of his life. He wanted another kiss. She walked away before blowing him a kiss. Why are we doing this? Anyway, Patrick tries interviewing a miserable Seth Rollins. Rollins begins seething, so the announcer runs away. Miz and Logan Paul homecoming with Jerry Lawler. Miz is happy to be home. The crowd chants his name. Miz is glad to finally show, or that he gets to show us some respect. He introduces his fellow hometown compatriot Logan Paul. Paul speaks about growing up in Cleveland and credited the city with helping him become who he is today. Not quite sure I buy that that's a thing, but anyhow. Miz said Paul accomplished everything on his own and didn't get favors from his dad like Dominic Mysterio did. He called Rey Mysterio a legend, but they've both accomplished the same things, and yet Rey is cheered and Miz is booed. Miz introduces Jerry Lawler, basically saying that he was born and raised in Cleveland. That's not the facts, and he talks about growing up in places around Ohio. He also said that Cleveland's where the Browns won the championship in 1964. Lawler thought it'd be great if Cleveland hosted WrestleMania. Miz didn't like the idea and began running down the city and said he doesn't even live there anymore. The city's football team moved to Baltimore. LeBron James left and Odell Beckham left and won championships too. Miz said the winners always left Cleveland and thought it's time he left now. Miz left Paul, seemed somewhat surprised, but Miz remarks, but he left with the Miz. Patrick interviews Tommaso Ciampa and Braun Breaker. Braun is excited to be on Raw for the first time and taking it all in. Braun called it a dream come true to compete on Raw and couldn't wait to get his hands on Dolph Ziggler and Robert Roode. Ciampa planned on beating them again. Announcers congratulate Gable Steveson on winning his third Big Ten championship. Sarah interviews the Street Profits, wondering how they had a path to WrestleMania. They remember that they beat RKO last week and said they should be next in line for the titles. They aired a video package of Braun Breaker as he enters. NXT champion Braun Breaker and Tommaso Ciampa defeat Dolph Ziggler and Robert Roode. 9:37. Braun gives Roode a delayed vertical suplex early in the match. Roode then gives Ciampa a spinebuster and the heels take over. Head of the break, Ciampa hits a knee strike before tagging in Braun, who gives Ziggler the big overhead suplex. Spinebuster, Braun runs in. Ziggler hits a kick, but then comes right back for the clothesline. Roode distracts Braun, and Ziggler uses Schoolboy for the near fall. Ziggler follows with a zigzag, but Ciampa breaks up the cover before taking Roode out. Braun then finished it off. Ziggler with a military power slam for the pinfall win. After the match, Ziggler told Braun and Ciampa he planned on winning the title tomorrow on NXT. Anyway, Omos takes a kind of weird view. He says he's going to take a spot at WrestleMania. Omos defeats Apollo Crews 2 minutes 42 seconds. Omos wins with a tree slam. After the match, Omos and Aziz had a brief stare down before Omos leaves. Third hour begins. Man, this show seems long. Video package of Edge's turn last week. They said AJ Styles suffers a severe neck contusion. Lights go off. Edge's music hits, but then fades, and Edge enters the arena. Arena is lit dimly. Edge is slowly entering the ring without music, and the crowd split in half. Edge says he knows Styles is watching at home and suggested that he puts his kids to bed. For this, Edge said that what he did Styles a favor. Edge says he felt freedom to fly last week. It's a side of him that he'd never seen before and a side that he'd fallen in love with. Edge felt in control over everything he does and everything that happens in the ring and everything that will happen in the industry. Edge also was standing on top of a mountain of omnipotence, and the view is phenomenal. They cut to the back a few moments later, lights turned back on, and they moved on to the next thing. And then Patrick interviewed Owens backstage. Owens said he wasn't as distraught as Rollins because he had an epiphany and an idea. He'd get a ticket to WrestleMania. Wanted to know what it was Owens said he would reveal tonight. They aired Reigns Lesnar MSG footage again. Graves said this is the most watched video on their Instagram page. Does anybody really care who has what on social media? I mean, it matters to those that are making money off it, but does the average fan care? No. Rhea Ripley and Liv Morgan defeat the tag team champions, Queen Zelina and Carmella, non-title match 9:04. This went about 6 minutes too long. Carmella kicks Ripley into the steps, allowing the team to take control through a break. Morgan eventually makes a tag and hitting Zelina with a missile dropkick for a 2 count. Zelina then follows up and makes no tag because Carmella is busy chatting with Graves. Morgan gives Zelina a code breaker, and Ripley follows up with a Riptide for the pinfall win. Carmella wasn't even paying attention when this all happened. Ripley and Morgan have been added to the tag team women's match at Mania. They announced Vader's induction into the Hall of Fame, and then they hype the Pat McCaffrey and Austin Theory match for WrestleMania non-title match. Finn Balor defeats Austin Theory 840 DQ. I don't know. This feels kind of flat. Anyway, so Balor's in control before the break. Theory goes on offense when they return. Balor then fights back, sets up Coops to Grace, but Damian Priest shows up out of nowhere and attacks Balor for the DQ. Priest lays out Balor with the Razor's Edge. Theory gives Balor the ATL and takes a selfie. Patrick asked Bianca Belair if she planned on using her hair as a weapon at WrestleMania. Bianca said that Becky Lynch were both in WrestleMania main eventers and they should fight for respect, but she used her hair as a weapon last week after Lynch tried using it against her. Belair said she'd win at WrestleMania. Then the main segment is... I hate that they close with talking segments, but I guess that's the new trope in WWE these days. Main event segment, Kevin Owens. Owens says he wants to have the biggest and most stupendous KO show in the history of WrestleMania because of where it's being held. He guess it should be someone from Texas. He could choose a blowhard like JBL, but bullhorns on his car would be more interesting. He said he could choose Booker T, but Booker T's a hypocrite, a Texan who spent most of his career in a team called Harlem Heat, who spoke with a fake British accent. He said he could choose Shawn Michaels, but Owens was a proud Canadian, and out of respect to Bret Hart, he wasn't going to do that. Owens then wanted a guy he hadn't seen in a long time, a guy who probably let himself go after years of drinking beer, a guy who probably couldn't even walk into the ring because he spent so many years wrestling in knee braces. Owens wanted to drop that person and pour a glass of milk over his lifeless body. The bottom line, calling you out, Stone Cold Steve Austin. They played Austin's music. But anyway, the match has been downplayed and into a segment. This is not a big deal. We'll be back with more right after this.